There's a quiet war brewing in India's hospitals, and it's one that could actually end up affecting your next medical bill. We're talking surgeon versus surgeon in a really high-stakes turf war. So let's break down what this conflict is all about, drawing directly from the source material. So the whole thing really kicked off in January 2026. And we're not talking about some quiet disagreement in a hospital cafeteria. No, this was a formal, public, legal threat. It was basically a legal shot across the bow, a public declaration of war from one group of doctors to another. It really set the stage for a huge confrontation. And the language they used in this warning, wow, it was severe. Their stated goal was to literally criminalize the everyday teamwork between different medical specialists. I mean, can you imagine being told that collaboration, which is the cornerstone of modern medicine, could land you in jail? That's what was happening. An attempt to turn teamwork into a crime. Okay, but to really get the true implications of this threat, we first need to understand who's actually involved. So who is fighting who, and what is this really all about? Let's break down the two sides of this conflict and the big accusation that's right at the heart of it all. All right, so in one corner, we've got the accusers. That's the Association of Plastic Surgeons of India, or APRS. And they're backed by a state medical body, the Telangana Medical Council. And in the other corner, you have the accused, the Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons, or OMFS. And, this is key, the anesthesiologists who work with them in surgery. Now, you might be wondering, who exactly are these oral and maxillofacial surgeons? Well, it's really important to get this. They are way more than dentists. You should think of them as the architects of the face. They're dental specialists who go through years of extra surgical training to rebuild and restore the most complex parts of our facial anatomy. Everything from the jaws right up to the skull. And that brings us to the main accusation. The Plastic Surgeons Association is claiming that when it comes to aesthetic procedures, things like hair transplants, these highly trained maxillofacial surgeons are basically just unqualified laypersons. It's a really shocking claim, and it's one that strikes right at the heart of their professional identity. So, is there any truth to this pretty explosive claim? I mean, does that label unqualified actually hold up when you look at the facts? Let's shift from just hearing the accusation to looking at the evidence and see what the official record has to say. This is really the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is that word unqualified a legal fact, or is it just a very carefully chosen word, a tactic in a professional fight? Well, the answer, it turns out, is right there in the official documents. To find that answer, we have to look at the Dental Council of India, or the DCI. And this isn't just some random organization. It's the main government-appointed body that regulates all dental and maxillofacial education for the entire country. What they say goes. Their regulations are the final word. And this is where it gets really interesting. The source points out a huge contradiction to the plastic surgeon's claim. The DCI's own official regulations, published back in 2019, don't just allow, but they explicitly include aesthetic procedures and hair transplants as a core part of the training for these surgeons. And look, this isn't some internal memo we're talking about. As you can see right here on the screen, this is the official proof, straight from the Gazette of India, which is the government's authorized legal newspaper. The regulations are right there in black and white for everyone to see, published by the highest authority. And if there was any doubt left at all, it was completely settled on the floor of the Indian Parliament. The big takeaway is this quote from late 2025. The Union Minister of State for Health went on the official record in Parliament and said that OMS specialists are trained and permitted to do these exact procedures. It just doesn't get any clearer than a direct statement from the government itself. So with all this evidence stacked so clearly against the accusation, you've got to ask yourself, why use such an extreme legal warning? Well, according to the source, the answer isn't really about the law itself, but about the tactics being used to get around it. See, the legal warning was pretty clever. It completely sidestepped all the medical regulations. Instead, it brought in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or BNS, which is India's new criminal code, and it specifically threatened doctors with Section 106. That's a serious charge for causing death by negligence. Suddenly, this isn't just a professional disagreement anymore. This is a threat of actual jail time. And here, the strategy becomes crystal clear. Notice who the legal threat was really aimed at, not the maxillofacial surgeons themselves, but their essential partners, the anesthesiologists. The source calls this coercive regulation, basically using the threat of prison to scare essential staff into stopping their work with the surgeons. But this isn't just some fight between doctors. The source argues that this professional turf war has a hidden and very high cost. So let's connect the dots and see why this battle matters directly to you, the patient, and to your wallet. The source explains this whole conflict with a concept called professional closure. And it's a textbook case. One group of professionals tries to box out the competition, not really for patient safety, but to keep a monopoly over a very profitable market. And as you can see, that attempt to create a monopoly kicks off a really devastating chain reaction. So look at step one. One group tries to force out their competition. That leads right to step two. The number of qualified, available doctors gets smaller. And when supply goes down, what happens to the price? Step three. Patient costs, what they pay out of pocket, they just skyrocket. And all of this leads to step four, which is a really terrible situation for families. Yeah. And distressed health financing isn't just some academic term. It describes a moment of pure desperation. It's when medical bills get so high that a family has to make impossible choices, sell their land, pawn wedding jewelry, or take on crushing loans just to pay for a procedure. The key insight from the source is that this professional gatekeeping is a direct cause of that financial pain for ordinary people. You know, this whole conflict brings up some really big questions that go way beyond just professional rules or money. They go all the way up to the Indian Constitution. The source argues this isn't just a turf war, it's actually a battle over fundamental rights. Let's take a look at the constitutional stakes here. So, what does the Indian Constitution have to say about all this? Well, as it turns out, a lot. The source argues these actions are violating fundamental rights on a few different levels. First, there's Article 19, which is about the right of the maxillofacial surgeons to practice their legal profession. Second, you've got Article 21, the right of patients to get safe and uninterrupted health care. And finally, that stop work order sent to anesthesiologists, that's seen as a classic case of a legal restraint of trade. So let's just boil this all down. What are the source's main conclusions? 1, the whole anti-quackery argument is just a smokescreen for protecting their business interests. 2, these actions are in direct defiance of the Union Health Ministry's authority. 3, patient safety is actually being put at risk, not because of incompetent doctors, but because anesthesia is being withheld over a turf war. And the bottom line? This whole conflict is driving up healthcare costs for regular people. And that leaves us with this one final, really critical question. When these powerful professional groups start to clash, each one trying to protect its own territory, who's left to look out for the rights, the safety, and the wallet of the patient?